Hey, this is the Last Coffee House. So one thing I wanted to talk about was Sargon of Akkad and Patreon. I know most everything that will need to be said has been said about this. I know Jordan Peterson and Dave Rubin are trying to come up with a Patreon alternative. The big issue is the payment processors. Apparently they're getting more uppity when it comes to content. Like Visa and MasterCard are trying to police to some degree the content that is coming out on through these payment processors that are even related to them. So a little bit of backstory. Sargon of Akkad, I'm sure everybody knows. Sargon of Akkad used the N-word. He was using it at a group of white supremacists on their, it wasn't on his channel. It wasn't on Patreon to any degree. It was on their channel. So he used that word trying to shame them with the kind of language that they would use to shame people of other races. And 10 months later, Patreon gets wind of this. Likely, somebody submitted it at some point. I know there's some organization that specifically tries to get people deplatformed who are on even vaguely right. I don't think Sargon is. I know I've listened to many of his things. And so the issue was that he said this on some other thing and some other platform. This would be like saying something to a private friend that gets around to the powers that be, and they decide that, no, we're not going to have that. You can't do that saying. Now, the Patreon terms of service specifically said that you can't say, use hateful speech, which it would be great, as a lawyer, if there's a contract, I want everything to be defined. It'd be great if they define this stuff in the terms of service, but in the terms of service, it specifically said on their platform. So it wasn't only not on their platform, it wasn't on anything that he gets support from Patreon for, like on his YouTube channel or whatever. I don't know if people support him for his Twitter work or what used to be his Twitter. I have no idea. But whatever the case, it wasn't on Patreon's platform, so it didn't seem to violate the terms of service. The big thing was there was no appeal right. There's no appeals whatsoever. It was just you're done and that's it. And then Patreon had an issue. They went and who'd they contact? Matt Christensen, I think, who's one of the best on YouTube that I watch pretty regularly. He's conservative. I say that pejoratively, but I like him a lot. He seems like a good quality guy who really makes an effort to do the research, make an argument, and not just be ridiculous. But so they contacted him, and he said he had like a transcript of what was said, and it was terrifying. The kinds of things that were said. It was like everything's a case-by-case basis. It was very clear that Sargon didn't violate the terms of service. What they should have done is given him a warning, and when he complained, said that's not in your terms of service, they should have updated their terms of service and then said, okay, any future infractions like this, and we're going to get rid of you. But they didn't do that. They just got rid of him and said it was because of this, and then tried to explain to others that it's a case-by-case basis, and we just have perfect discretion on deciding whether somebody's going to have that source of income next month or not, and that's terrifying. I know Sam Harris already dropped Patreon. He just immediately got rid of it. But like he said, he was talking about it, he's saying it's not all on principle. He said a lot of it had to do with his personal interest because he can't have something that's so, who knows, that's so up in the air and isn't clear. The thing should be, and you would think that, and it would be much better, even if they had really harsh terms of service that said, like, if you ever use any of these words, then we're going to kick you off or something like that. That would be much better than just maybe not case-by-case basis. That's the thing that they kept saying when they were talking to Matt Christensen, is just case-by-case, case-by-case. And obviously this is just fudging it, so I'm sure their payment process, Visa or somebody just threw a fit because somebody else threw a fit, and they had to figure out some reason to be able to do it. But having no appeal option, having no strike system or warning system, that's insane. And word to YouTube, even though they do get annoying and they do make mistakes, at least they have a clear system that's laid out. Again, you would love to just have it very clear on what the terms of service are and what you can say and can't say. But they're just never going to do that because they want their discretion just in case. That's what you do when you're writing these things. If you want discretion, you make it vague. It's pretty clear and straightforward. Anyway, so you just, like, how much are you going to get boxed into a corner like this? Sam Harris was talking about it, saying how he really thinks now it's ideological. It's not just based on uniform application of the terms of service, which is what it should be. It's ideological. They know that Sargon has been spouting a whole bunch of right side, right-leaning, anti-SJW kind of stuff, anti-feminism, whatever else. So therefore, they want to get rid of him. him, they find a reason to get rid of him, and there you go. The context, obviously, he was using it in a specific context that I think was the kind of context that to some degree nullifies any argument of being used as hate speech. You can't say that it was used as hate speech in that particular context against a protected group. It's ridiculous. It doesn't make any sense in that context. And, people who make rap music, you wouldn't say that they're using it as hate speech. So it's not being used in that way. It's specifically being used in a way that makes no sense to call it hate speech. So in that context, who knows? But that's not even the question. The question, because it's not a violation in terms of service, because they said the terms of service was related to Patreon, the platform, doing the kind of thing on the platform. They didn't even extend it to other things, but now they just take a holistic account of anybody you've ever talked to or any platform you're doing anything on and say, even though this wasn't in their terms of service, they just take a holistic account and say, case by case, we're going to decide whether you can have people who want to give you income give you income. That's pretty insane. That's pretty insane to me. So hopefully Jordan Peterson, Dave Rubin, I know they're doing pretty well out there in the world, so hopefully they can come up with an alternative, but I don't think either of them have. I mean, I'm sure Dave Rubin is pretty business savvy at this point, but I don't know that either one of them have the kind of expertise that would be necessary to make something that is so payment processor proof that they don't have to kowtow to that. Not only that, and I think they're definitely smart enough to figure out, what kind of terms would make sense. The way that they were talking about it, I was just listening to them. All the questions they were asking about it seemed like the best kinds of questions to ask. Because, you love to say just free speech, period, but that isn't and shouldn't be the case when it comes to these kinds of things. Obviously, they're not bound by the First Amendment. Private company, they wouldn't be bound by that. But there has to be some kind of a line. I know on Sam Harris's most recent podcast, he was talking to somebody who was talking about just blocking ISIS videos of like beheadings and stuff like that. Like in 2015, that was kind of a big deal. That was like, should we do that? What kind of rabbit hole are we going down if we start blocking this kind of stuff? And now, holy hell, it's such a different world. How does that happen? But she was specifically, oh my God, it was so interesting. It's one of the best ones I've heard in a while. But she was talking about specifically how when you do polling on certain questions, then like 80% or 85% will support something, and then you'll look on Twitter and 99% will be outraged against it. And it's just shocking. It's like, this is the whole problem, the whole part of a whole. The proportion thing is the thing that humans don't get. We used to live in bands of 40 to 100 people, so we didn't have to worry so much about the proportion whole thing. But now that's the big deal. That's the number one thing that is going against our ability to be able to function in these kinds of structures, these societies, on these platforms. It's just, there are way too many people that we're interacting with now, and our little tiny primate brains just can't pull it all together or understand it. So then, just like in the 90s when you'd watch the news and they'd be parading people of certain race saying, look at all these criminals, and then that our stupid brains just amplify it like crazy and don't realize the difference between a highlight of something and it being highlighted as important and what kind of impact that has on our brain and understanding what that actually means as part of a whole. Like, we can't do that. And now it's just so much worse because you have things like Twitter, where you go on Twitter and you see 100 people who are outraged about a thing. You don't see the 1.5 million people who don't care whatsoever. So it's oh, what a world we live in. Who knows if it's worth saving. So that's what I just want to say that about Patreon and Sargon and all that stuff. If you want a position from me, although it doesn't really matter, who cares what my personal position is? My position is pretty much mirror the First Amendment that calls for specific violence against a specific person. That's a problem. Otherwise, no, hate speech isn't a category. It's not a legal category. It shouldn't be a category out there in the world. Who cares? Somebody wants to say something mean to you. Who cares? Deal with it. Done, over, that's it. If you have all sorts of ways to block people on Twitter and all that sort of stuff, and there can be things related to like spamming. If somebody's spamming something, there could be some rate of spamming that is too much, that somebody will get blocked, automatically on that basis, or you can block them, or if they keep coming up with new accounts or something like that, then you can do something about it. But so whatever the case, it should mirror the First Amendment. We need to stop playing with this nonsense. Like, if you're calling for imminent violence against a person, person, then fine. If somebody wants to say some stupid stuff that hurts people's feelings, then deal with it. Done. But then you get a whole bunch of interest groups and whatever the case, and they throw all sorts of fits, and then, if that gets back to, like I said, all the things backing all this stuff. The terrifying thing is not being able to even function. If we started balkanizing ourselves into camps wherein, like, if you go to a McDonald's or something and McDonald's says, what are your political views? Do you support President Trump? And if you answer the wrong way, they say, sorry, you can't buy anything here. That's the kind of thing that we're kind of descending into. And I know, what was it? Dave Room? Yeah, he was talking about that. He was saying, what if an electric company or water company just said, we don't want to support people. They just started senators who are like Republican senators, or the other way around, and say, we don't want to support people of those political bent, that political bent. So we're just not going to give you water. You don't get water anymore to your house. Go find some other way to do it. Go dig a well. So we can't descend to that nonsense. We have to protect speech more than anything else in the world. We have to protect speech. So that's my take. That's that. This one that wasn't based on an article or anything like that. I just wanted to get on here and just spew some stuff. If there's anything incorrect in anything I have to say, then feel free to correct me. I'm happy to hear it. Otherwise, I hope you have a good week and all that stuff. All right, bye.